In the relentless pursuit of success, morality is the fragile line separating noble effort from reckless ambition. When desire consumes a soul, driving it to crush others in its quest for glory, any triumph is a fleeting mirage, teetering on the edge of ruin. Cunning plans, cloaked as cleverness, often sow the seeds of tragedy. Crossing the ethical boundary risks not just the trust of others, but the very core of one's humanity. The story we unravel today is a heart-wrenching testament to this truth. A young woman, radiant with promise, had her life extinguished by the venom of envy and unchecked greed. The consequences tore through a family, a university, and an entire community, leaving wounds that linger still. Welcome to Behind the Crime, where we peel back the layers of deceit to expose the chilling reality behind the murder of Grace Zhao at the abandoned Cold Haven factory in Shenyang, Liaoning Province, China. Prepare for a journey into a world of betrayal, calculation, and the devastating cost of ambition gone astray. It was 6 a.m. on April 18, 2010, in Shenyang, a city of steel and smoke, stirring quietly under a gray dawn. Zheng Huasheng, a civil engineer with graying temples and a clipboard worn from years of use, stepped onto the desolate grounds of the Cold Haven factory. Shuttered since 2005, the site was a relic of industrial decline, a sprawling wasteland frozen in time. Rusted barrels tilted like drunken sentinels, their surfaces pitted with corrosion. Shattered concrete slabs jutted from the earth, jagged and unforgiving, while tattered tarps flapped mournfully in the breeze. Waist-high weeds choked the cracked pathways, and piles of debris, rotting plywood, twisted rebar, discarded bricks, gave off a rancid stench of mold and decay. The air was thick, oppressive, as if the place exhaled years of abandonment. Jing, tasked with surveying the site for a demolition and redevelopment project, moved cautiously through the rear warehouse area, his boots crunching on loose gravel. A flicker of unease struck him as his eyes caught an anomaly. A faded green tarp, half buried under leaves and debris, covering an irregular shape near a crumbling western brick wall. Approaching with a tightening chest, he lifted the tarp, and the sight stole his breath. A young woman lay face up, her lifeless eyes staring blankly at the sky. Her arms rested limply by her sides, legs slightly parted. Her clothing, a thin beige sweater and gray checkered skirt, disheveled, the skirt pulled up to expose her lower body. Faint bruises marred her arms and thighs, abrasions dotted her knees and wrists, and a deep, bloodied strangulation mark encircled her neck, the skin torn as if by brutal force. Staggering back, Zheng's hands shook as he fumbled for his phone, dialing the local police hotline. His voice trembled as he reported the gruesome discovery, the weight of the moment sinking into his bones. Within 15 minutes, a criminal investigation team descended, their vehicles kicking up dust. Forensic experts and crime scene technicians followed, their faces grim under the early morning light. Zheng was instructed to preserve the site, touching nothing, as officers cordoned off the 400-square-meter warehouse area with yellow tape, clearing out anyone without a purpose. The warehouse was a chaotic ruin, cracked concrete floors blanketed with dust and debris, surrounded by tall weeds and industrial relics, rusted barrels, rotting plywood, and a western brick wall, weathered and fractured, its peeling plaster exposing raw brick beneath. The area lacked surveillance cameras or lighting, plunging it into near-total darkness at night. Situated 800 meters from the nearest main road and bordered by a rundown residential area with scant foot traffic, the site was a perfect cloak for a crime. The victim's body lay in an open clearing near the western wall, her disarrayed clothing and exposed lower body suggesting a possible sexual assault, though something felt staged, as if arranged to mislead. Officers began their work with meticulous precision, photographing the body and surroundings from every angle. Near the victim's head, they found a crumpled pair of women's underwear, stained but fresh, positioned deliberately, almost theatrically. A black handbag lay overturned nearby, its zipper closed, showing no signs of tampering. Inside were personal items: identification documents, a pen, a tube of lipstick, and a small notebook filled with handwritten notes, its pages worn from frequent use. The documents identified the victim as Grace Zhao, born in 1989, a final-year chemistry student at Northeastern University of Science and Technology in Shenyang. The police contacted the university and her family, their voices heavy as they delivered the news. The body showed minimal decomposition, preserved by the cool concrete and early spring temperatures. Forensic experts conducted a preliminary examination, noting the strangulation mark as the most severe injury, its depth and torn skin, suggesting death by asphyxiation with a rope or cord. Faint bruises on her arms and thighs, along with light abrasions on her knees and wrists, hinted at a brief struggle. After documenting the scene, the body was placed in a specialized preservation bag and transported to the Shenyang Forensic Institute's autopsy room for a detailed examination to pinpoint the time and cause of death and collect evidence linked to the perpetrator. Investigators scoured the surrounding area, their flashlights cutting through dim corners. They focused on entry points: breached walls, rusted gates, hidden paths through the overgrowth. The warehouse's isolation made eyewitnesses unlikely, but they examined the dusty concrete for traces. Within a 50-meter radius, they found several footprints, 3 distinct on a dust-covered cement patch. These size 41 prints with a clear tread pattern belonged to a JJ brand sports shoe, a common mid-range brand in China. The prints led toward a southern path exiting the warehouse, suggesting an escape route. With no cameras or regular visitors, the site's desolation worked against finding witnesses. The police hypothesized a sexual assault turned murder based on the victim's posture, disheveled clothing, neck wounds, and a nearby rope fragment. The case was classified as a priority homicide with potential sexual elements, prompting a multi-pronged investigation, tracing Grace Zhao's last movements, analyzing physical evidence, and delving into her personal life. At the Shenyang Forensic Institute, Grace Zhao's body lay on a stainless steel autopsy table under harsh, fluorescent lights. The forensic team, led by Dr. Chen Wei, a veteran pathologist with a reputation for precision, began with standard measurements: rectal and skin temperatures and physiological data. Grace stood 1.62 meters tall and weighed 51 kilograms, her frame slight but healthy. Her rectal temperature was 15.6 ard, and her skin was 15.1 Ds, compared to an environmental temperature of 18 Ds, with a 3 to 3.5 Dixie differential, intermediate tissue decomposition, and diminishing rigor mortis. Dr. Chen estimated death occurred 48 hours prior, between 5 and 6 p.m. on April 15, 2010. The skin showed early decomposition, wrinkled folds on the wrists, abdomen, and thighs, and a pale yellow hue with bruising on the back and shoulders from blood pooling post-mortem. Apart from minor abrasions, there were no major external injuries, suggesting no prolonged assault. The most severe injury was the neck strangulation mark, deep, bloodied with torn skin, indicating a forceful attack with a rope or cord. Rigor mortis was moderate in the limbs but pronounced in the neck, consistent with death by strangulation. The victim's face showed slight swelling, cyanotic lips, and bulging eyes with petechial hemorrhages in the sclera, classic signs of asphyxiation. Under her fingernails, the team noted an unusual cleanliness, as if scrubbed with alcohol or a disinfectant to remove DNA evidence. A single strand of long auburn hair, distinct from Grace's dark locks, was found caught in her sweater, its vibrant hue standing out. Sent for DNA analysis, it later proved critical, belonging to another woman. Dr. Chen performed a Y-shaped incision, revealing the internal organs, heart, liver, lungs, kidneys, stomach, and colon, preserved in formalin for testing. No pre-existing conditions were found, but the lungs showed congestion and localized hemorrhaging, typical of oxygen deprivation from strangulation. To investigate sexual assault, the vaginal area was examined with care. No trauma, tears, bruises, or abrasions was present, and microscopic analysis showed normal vaginal mucosa, with no signs of forced penetration. Tests for semen or lubricant residues were negative, ruling out sexual assault. Blood samples from the heart revealed trace amounts of zopiclone, a sedative, at a concentration sufficient to cause drowsiness or unconsciousness 10 to 15 minutes before death. This suggested Grace was drugged, rendering her vulnerable. The autopsy painted a chilling picture. She was sedated with zopiclone, then strangled with a rope, dying within minutes. The absence of sexual assault raised questions about the exposed lower body. Was it staged to mislead investigators, or an interrupted act? The cleaned fingernails, the auburn hair, and the careful planning pointed to a calculated murder, not a crime of passion. The investigation turned to Grace's personal life to uncover motives and suspects. Grace Zhao, born in 1989 in a rural village in Heilongjiang province, grew up in a modest farming family, their lives tied to the seasons. Her parents, hard-working and unassuming, had no known enemies, their lives quiet and unremarkable. At Northeastern University, Grace was a standout chemistry student, her desk always piled with textbooks and lab notes. Professors described her as diligent, serious, and quietly ambitious, her eyes often fixed on her work. Friends admired her focus and kindness, though she kept most at a distance, preferring the solitude of the lab. Her dream was to secure a prestigious research scholarship at Tsinghua University, a beacon of hope for a girl from a humble village. Her nanotechnology project on water filtration, developed with classmate Lucy Liu Hing-ni, had earned a top 6 spot in a national competition, catching Tsinghua's attention. The achievement was a testament to Grace's brilliance, but it set the stage for her tragic end. On April 16th, Grace was scheduled for a critical scholarship interview at Tsinghua, a make-or-break moment. Her failure to appear stunned her professors, who knew her fierce preparation. Her disappearance went unnoticed until her body was found on April 18th, as she often spent long hours in the lab or library. Roommates reported that on April 15th, Grace seemed her usual self, her voice steady as she left the dormitory around 4 p.m. to handle something, promising to return before curfew. That was the last they saw of her. Campus security footage showed her leaving in a taxi, wearing the same beige sweater and gray skirt, her black handbag slung over her shoulder. Traffic cameras traced the taxi to a road 3 kilometers from the Cold Haven factory. The driver, a middle-aged man with a weathered face, confirmed dropping her at the factory gate. She was alone, showed no distress, and took his number for a return trip she never called. This suggested Grace went to the factory willingly, ruling out abduction. Her phone records showed no suspicious calls. Only routine contacts with friends and family, none of whom mentioned a meeting at the factory. The police suspected she was lured there under false pretenses, her trust betrayed by someone she knew. The factory's security guard, Zhang Yi, 35, became an early suspect. His nervous demeanor, shifty eyes, trembling voice, and sweating brow despite the cool interrogation room raised red flags. He wore size 41 JJ shoes, their tread matching the crime scene prints. Zhang Yi claimed he was drinking with friends on April 15th, shirking his duties, a habit developed over months of lax oversight. Bar surveillance and witness statements confirmed his alibi. He was at a tavern, his laughter slurred with cheap liquor, miles from the factory. The matching shoe prints suggested the perpetrator used similar shoes to frame him, adding premeditation to the crime. Zhang Yi's relief at being cleared was palpable. But his negligence left a bitter taste. Had he been at his post, Grace might still be alive. A second crime scene sweep uncovered a pivotal clue. Tucked behind the warehouse, near a rusted trash can buried under debris, investigators found a partially burned piece of paper, its edges charred and curling. Amid the ash, a legible fragment read, "Hope to meet you." Fingerprint analysis revealed 2 prints, one belonging to Grace Zhao, the other to Lucy Liu, her classmate and collaborator. This thrust Lucy Liu into the spotlight as the prime suspect, her name a shadow over the investigation. Lucy Liu's life was a stark contrast to Grace's. Born in 1989 in a rural corner of Liaoning, she grew up in the wreckage of a broken family. Her parents divorced when she was 6, leaving her with her grandmother in a crumbling house, its walls patched with newspaper. Neighbors and classmates mocked her patched clothes and secondhand books, branding her the rag girl, words that seared into her psyche. The humiliation fueled a fierce ambition to rise above her circumstances, no matter the cost. At university, her academic ability was average, her grades respectable, but unremarkable. Yet her cunning and charisma made her a master of manipulation, cultivating ties with professors and peers through flattery and fabricated sob stories. She learned that charm could open doors her intellect couldn't. Paired with Grace for the nanotechnology project, Lucy contributed little, her role logistical while Grace poured her heart into the research. But Lucy saw an opportunity. She manipulated Grace with tales of a sick grandmother and financial hardship, even staging a fake suicide note, its ink smudged with crocodile tears, to guilt Grace into sharing co-authorship. Grace, kind-hearted and empathetic, relented, allowing Lucy to present their work at conferences, where her eloquence outshone Grace's quieter brilliance. When their project earned a top 6 spot in a national competition, Tsinghua offered a 2-year scholarship, but for only 1 student. The news fractured their friendship, turning them into rivals. Grace, the project's intellectual backbone, felt entitled to the scholarship, having contributed over 80% of the work. Lucy, leveraging her charisma and faculty connections, masked her resentment with a smile. If Grace disappeared, Lucy stood to gain everything. The investigation tightened around Lucy Liu like a noose. Bank records revealed critical clues. On April 10th, she purchased size 41 JJ shoes at a local store, captured on grainy surveillance trying them on, her petite frame dwarfed by the oversized sneakers. The same day, she bought Zopiclone at a nearby pharmacy, the cashier recalling her nervous haste. On April 15th at 2:50 p.m., she paid for a taxi that traffic cameras traced toward the Cold Haven factory, its route eerily close to Grace's. The driver, a grizzled man with a cigarette-stained voice, recalled a petite woman wearing oversized black sports shoes, their JJ logo unmistakable. He noted her odd demeanor, her eyes darting as if expecting someone. A female detective, tailing Lucy discreetly, collected a straw she used at a cafe, its rim wet with her lipstick. DNA from the straw matched the auburn hair on Grace's sweater, a damning link. A search of Lucy's dorm room uncovered a Zopiclone packet, its foil missing 1 pill, the active ingredient matching the sedative in Grace's blood. 3 parallel scratches on her right hand, which she claimed were from cleaning, suggested a struggle, their fresh redness betraying her lie. On April 18th, as she packed a suitcase to flee to Beijing, police stormed her dorm, their boots echoing on the linoleum. She froze, her hands clenching the suitcase handle, her eyes darting for an escape that didn't exist. Her forced calm crumbled under their gaze, her fingers trembling as they read the arrest warrant. During interrogation, Lucy initially denied everything, her voice steady but her eyes betraying panic. She hid her scratched hand, tucking it into her sleeve, but the detectives noticed. They presented a cascade of evidence: the fingerprints on the burned note, the bank records, the taxi's route, the DNA from the hair, the Zopiclone packet, and the scratches. Each piece chipped away at her facade. After 8 grueling hours, her shoulders slumped, and she confessed. She had lured Grace to the factory with a handwritten note, feigning reconciliation and promising to withdraw from the scholarship race. She chose the Cold Haven factory, a site they'd visited for research, knowing its isolation and lack of surveillance. She studied the guard's lax schedule, noting his absences, and bought JJ shoes to frame him. On April 15th, she arrived early, a bottle of water laced with zopiclone in her bag, a rope coiled in her pocket. Grace arrived at 5:00 p.m., trusting and unaware. Lucy offered the drugged water, her smile masking her intent. As Grace grew drowsy, her steps faltering, Lucy slipped behind her, looping the rope around her neck. Grace's desperate struggle left scratches on her hand, but it was futile. After confirming Grace's death, she staged a sexual assault scene, pulling up her skirt and scattering her belongings. She cleaned Grace's nails with alcohol-soaked tissues to remove DNA, then burned the note. But wind and moisture preserved a fragment. She destroyed most evidence but overlooked the zopiclone packet, a fatal error. The trial in late 2010 drew a media frenzy, the courtroom packed with reporters and grieving family members. Grace's parents, weathered farmers with calloused hands, sat silently, their faces etched with loss. Lucy's defense argued her traumatic childhood, poverty, abandonment, and ridicule had warped her psyche, driving her to act under pressure. They cited her lack of prior convictions and academic record, pleading for leniency. The prosecution, led by a steely-eyed prosecutor, countered with evidence of meticulous planning: the shoe purchase, the sedative, the stage scene, and the attempted evidence destruction. Her initial denials and flight preparations showed a cold, calculated intent. The court sentenced her to death for premeditated murder, rejecting all pleas for mercy. As the gavel fell, Grace's mother let out a quiet sob. Her grief, a heavy presence. The murder shook Shenyang, exposing the toxic pressures of academic competition. Northeastern University overhauled its scholarship protocols, introducing transparent evaluations and mandatory mental health support. Grace's family, shattered but resilient, established a memorial fund for underprivileged students, a tribute to her dream of uplifting others. The case sparked national debates on ethical education, urging schools to balance academic rigor with character development. It remains a stark reminder that ambition, unchecked by morality, can lead to tragedy. Lucy Liu's calculated betrayal, born from envy and desperation, not only ended a life but exposed the fragility of trust in competitive environments. Had Grace's brilliance been nurtured without rivalry, had Lucy's pain been met with guidance, this tragedy might have been averted. What are your thoughts on this case? How do we protect young minds from such darkness? Share your comments below and don't forget to like and subscribe to Behind the Crime for more stories that uncover the truth behind humanity's darkest moments.